Do you think you found a good deal for your property? Maybe $12,000 for an acre? Think again. The United States bought Alaska for 2 cents an acre. On March 30th, 1867, one of the largest deals in American history took place. The United States had purchased the area of Alaska for $7.2 million. Once the United States had diplomatically purchased Alaska, American citizens debated its value. In hindsight, Americans that saw the potential in the land were correct, as it gave the United States access to strategic positioning for its military and a land abundant with natural resources. Just over 200 years before this transaction, in 1741, another great event took place. The first Russian expedition landed in Alaska. The captain, Vitus Bering, and his crew were the first to cross what is now known as the Bering Strait. This was the first of many expeditions to come. Russia quickly began working to colonize Alaska, although it was hard work. The distance from their homeland made communication all but impossible, and the harsh Arctic climate made agriculture a non-viable means of providing food for a settlement. In spite of it all, Russia was able to find a way. The first permanent settlement in Alaska was founded in August of 1784. However, Russia's presence in Alaska came with its consequences. The Aleut population, estimated to have been 16,000 to 20,000 in the early 1700s, had dropped to 7,000 in 1836. This was a similar theme throughout most of the other tribes as well. Their immune systems were simply not adapted to the new diseases the Russians had brought with them. The Russians didn't just affect the native population though. After more than 40 years of expeditions, the key resource making Alaska profitable to them was quickly vanishing. This resource was the sea otter population around Alaska. These small mammals lived their whole lives at the sea, so they had evolved with completely waterproof fur. This fur was extremely valuable as clothing material. When Russia saw the abundance of sea otters, they began hunting them in the hundreds. This led to a sharp decline in the sea otter population. In the Billings expedition between 1785 and 1793, James Billing and his crew were sent from St. Petersburg and tasked with the mission of finding an adequate passage between the Pacific and Arctic Oceans. They witnessed the absence of the sea otters firsthand as they saw them less and less over the span of their expedition. This annihilation of otters turned over a massive stepping stone for the Russian colonization of Alaska. Without their primary source of profits, Alaska slowly began to lose its value to Russia. This loss of value continued at full speed, not slowing down. That is until the Crimean War between 1852 and 1856. Russia fought against Britain, Turkey, France, and Sardinia in a war prompted by the disagreement on the rights of Christians in the Ottoman empires. In the end, Russia lost big time, and they were left in debt from all their military expenses. At this point, any and all value Alaska held for Russia simmered out of existence. It was incredibly expensive for them to continue their Alaskan endeavors, and they could not even properly defend the area. This was proven in 1855 and 1856 when French and British ships were able to attack and take over towns that belonged to Russia. By the end of the 1850s, Russia began to view Alaska as a liability and decided that the best course of action would be to sell Alaska as quickly as possible and turn their attentions toward developing and expanding more in Asia. Russia offered Alaska the United States for the first time in 1859, hoping to have an ally be the one in control of the land. However, this first attempt at selling Alaska was unsuccessful. The United States was on the brink of a civil war and in no position to make a decision of this magnitude. Civil war did come for the U.S., and it was fought for 4 long years, between 1861 and 1865. Though not long after, William H. Seward began proposing the idea of purchasing Alaska to the government. After 2 years of propositions, Seward finally convinced the current president, Andrew Johnson, to purchase Alaska. And on March 30th, 1867, the Treaty of Cession was signed, officially transferring Alaska into the USA's possession. for $7.2 million.
The acquisition of Alaska by the United States on March 30th, 1867, was dubbed Seward's Folly, or ridiculed as Seward's Icebox by critics at the time. The eponyms refer to William H. Seward. Many articles on the purchase shared the same views. The Americans believed that Alaska was a barren wasteland with no real value to the United States. Although sprinkled in between, there were articles that held different views. Its chief value consists in its fisheries and fur trade. These articles were written by those who had more insight into the land and believed that the land held potential in its resources. They were proven to be correct several times over throughout the last 150 years. In 1988, the state accounted for 25% of U.S. domestic production of oil. This is an extremely large amount of oil, around 1 billion barrels of it. With just the collection of Alaska's oil, the U.S. could already justify their purchase of Alaska, especially due to the fact that our modern-day world is completely dependent on fossil fuels. Along with the abundance of oil that has been found in Alaska, its fisheries are also extremely valuable for America. Annual seafood harvests in Alaska are consistently between 5 to 6 billion pounds, accounting for about 60% of total U.S. seafood harvests. Again, we see the immense value of Alaska. 60% of all seafoods coming in from one state. That is billions of pounds of food coming in yearly. And not only is that a lot of food, it also creates thousands upon thousands of jobs. This land purchase provides the U.S. with an overflowing supply of natural resources. Nowadays, Alaska's location makes the state a critical component of the nation's ballistic missile defense system. All of these different values that the U.S. attained off the Alaska purchase are extremely beneficial to the United States economy as a whole.
Over the last 150 years, the United States has benefited off the Alaska purchase. But will it continue to do so in the future? Will Alaska continue to be as valuable as it was thought to be in 1867? Alaska has been experiencing a steady decline in oil production for many years now. In some places in Alaska, the salmon have completely stopped showing up. This year there are no fish. For the first time in memory, both king and chum salmon have dwindled to almost nothing, and the state has banned salmon fishing on the Yukon. Even the subsistence harvests that Alaskan natives rely on to fill their freezers and pantries for winter. When Alaska's primary resources run out, will the United States find themselves in the same predicament that prompted Russia to sell Alaska in the first place?